Hello, hello. Happy Wednesday. I hope you are having a fabulous morning already. Today is Wednesday, and more importantly, it's Wellness Wednesday. And if you're just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna, and I am a mom, a nana, a girlfriend. Yesterday, I got to be a nana all day because I got to spend time with one of my grandchildren, which seems to be rare in the last few weeks, but I was very happy about it. And what's going on with my lighting? There we go. And I am a grad school student studying for my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling, a jazzerciser, yoga, dance. I love to be active, and wellness is very important to me. In fact, I started Wellness Wednesday because I have spent most of my life battling with anxiety and depression, and found that peer wisdom really works, that sharing my story has helped others, and likewise, hearing others' stories have helped me tremendously. Sometimes we pick up things that we just never knew about, especially if they're organic methods of treating things like exercise and diet. They might not be things you really give much thought to until you've actually tried them or heard from somebody else. Not only that, but sometimes we hear, we're just like kids with our parents. Sometimes we hear the same thing over and over and over again, and it doesn't click until we hear it from somebody else or at just the right time. So a lot of times on Wellness Wednesday, you'll hear things you've probably heard before. You may have been like, I know that, I knew that. But it may just take the right moment to click. And my best hope is that for you, that maybe during Wellness Wednesday is one of those moments where something clicks. So I would love it if you're here, if you let me know you're here. Lately, Facebook has not been showing me as much. They've not been showing me if somebody's watching. Sometimes they don't even show me names or comments. So if you're here, let me know you're here. Drop a comment, ask a question. If I don't respond during my video, then it's just because Facebook didn't show me, and I will definitely answer afterwards. But it's been a little weird lately. It's hard to leave anything alone. We got to change everything all the time, right? And it's hard to keep up. So in any case, Wellness Wednesday a lot of times ends up digging into mindset. And the last couple of weeks, we've taken a little bit of a lighter approach. Last week, the video was on my favorite movies that are great family films and also have some awesome messages for the kids for summer break, maybe sometimes the adults. In fact, the movies that I recommended whether you have kids or not. And if you missed that one, then you can go back through my Facebook profile. All the videos are there. You can go to the videos tab and see them. I did notice that lately, for whatever reason, it's not showing my face on some of them, on the thumbnails. It's only showing like from my head up. But they're there. I promise they're there. If you didn't get a chance to see that, let me know. I'll tag you in the video or drop a link in the comments to that video. But today we're going to talk about coffee, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And yes, I have a little bit of coffee this morning. And a little story to tell you, of course. So let's get started. I'm going to start with Nerd Facts, also known as Donna's Nerd Facts. Haven't done these in a few weeks. So here we go. Coffee beans come from a shrub with a berry-like fruit known as the coffee cherry that actually contains two beans. So they're not like little coffee beans growing on a plant, which I didn't know until this week. But they are actually, they are beans that exist within a fruit called the coffee cherry, or known as the coffee cherry. Ripe coffee beans are actually green until they're roasted. And then Brazil is the largest coffee producer at 1/3 of the world's total production. I'm sure most of us could have guessed that. And there's a legend that says that the origin of coffee is because a goat herder noticed his goats, becoming particularly energetic after eating a certain type of berry. So he tried it too, liked the way it made him feel, the exhilaration it gave him, and thus the rest is history. There's not actually any, from what I could tell, there's not any confirmed origin of coffee outside of that legend. Light roasts, and you wouldn't think this. I mean, naturally, you would think that the darker the roast and the more bold the smell, that the more caffeine it would have in it. But light roasts actually have more caffeine than dark roasts. Dark roasts are only bolder in flavor and aroma, which I found very interesting. And then the last couple little nerd facts here. The first coffee house ever established was in Istanbul in 1475. Starbucks is the largest coffee company in the world. Shocker. And as of March 8th, 2023, which is the date of the article, one of the articles I used, the most expensive coffee was $600 a pound. Now, I don't know. I like coffee, but that's a lot of money. So there's some quick coffee nerd facts for you, that you can just rattle off. But we're going to start with the good. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to coffee. So the good, and most of these are attributed to caffeine. They're attributed more to the caffeine content than they are the coffee itself. So keep that in mind. Increased alertness and reduced fatigue from caffeine. We kind of already knew that. Increased coordination and reaction time. I had never really given it much thought, but that's probably true. If we're more alert and we have reduced fatigue, it makes sense that other things would work better too. And I will tell you that even though I try not to drink coffee every day, and I'll get to that in a little bit, that if I'm really dragging and I have a cup of coffee, then yes, I would say everything increases. Like the next one, increased cognitive function, memory, and mood in moderate doses. Now again, I can't stress enough, this is probably more related to the caffeine than it is the coffee itself, but the caffeine content of it. Increased endurance. So apparently some runners suck on coffee beans. Some of us do gels, or coconut water or whatever while we're running, chews, but some people suck on coffee beans, and that caffeine content helps with endurance and longevity on the run. Some runners do espresso before a run and can see increased endurance. And another thing that I forgot to dig into a little bit more is something known as bulletproof coffee. And there are some runners, or athletes who swear by bulletproof coffee, which is a cup of coffee with a tablespoon of butter or a tablespoon of coconut oil, some kind of MCT or saturated fat that helps the coffee kind of stick longer and increase endurance for a longer period of time. So coffee, as you probably know, also speeds up the absorption and effectiveness of some OTC painkillers, which is why some of them started coming out on the market years ago with a caffeine mixed into them, because it actually increases the speeds up the time it takes for them to go into effect. Now, again, most of that is related to the caffeine content, so that's not necessarily coffee specific. What is coffee specific is that it's high in antioxidants, especially the ones that combat oxidative stress. It may decrease, studies show that it may decrease certain types of cancer, heart disease, Parkinson's, and diabetes. It also serves, and I thought this was hilarious, one article I was reading referred to it as a social lubricant. Interesting choice of words. So think of it as social drinking without the alcohol. And that's true, isn't it? There's a lot of people that get together for coffee. We refer to coffee clutches, coffee chats, just like I did for this one this morning. So getting together over coffee is often a social gathering. So I can see where, and it's not because there's anything in the coffee necessarily that does it, but more of just that. Coffee, just like meals, just like alcohol, tend to be a reason that people gather. Hey, let's go out for coffee. Hey, let's grab a coffee. So it makes perfect sense to me that it could be considered a social lubricant. And if you see me looking over here, I have cute little hummingbirds on my feeders outside the window. So those make me happy. So another possibility, more research shows that coffee may benefit liver health and reduce the risk of liver diseases. And again, I can't stress enough, moderation. So those are some of the good things and some of the most commonly known good things about coffee. And again, most of those are actually attributed to the caffeine content, not the coffee. So here's the bad. Like I said, we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So here's the bad. And again, same thing here. Most of these have more to do with the caffeine content than they do the coffee itself. The bad. It can be addictive. Caffeine can be addictive. We all know that. In fact, I'm of the opinion that just about anything can be addictive, can be habit forming. That doesn't, and I'll explain that again in a couple of minutes here. So it can be addictive. Caffeine can lead to dependence and withdrawal symptoms. And for some people, including me, It's not necessarily, caffeine is not necessarily the reason we drink the coffee. In my case, when I drink coffee, because I add a little something to it when I do, in my case, in some people's cases, it's actually the flavor that we crave, not necessarily the effects of the coffee. Like I said, almost anything can be habit forming if you like it enough and do it enough. So it can be addictive, it can lead to dependence, and it can lead to withdrawal symptoms such as headaches, lethargy, etc. if you are drinking it excessively and then stop instead of kind of weaning off. It can be responsible for sleep pattern disruption and reduced sleep quality. And again, that's more related to the caffeine than the coffee itself. Teeth staining. Tea stain teeth. Berries can stain teeth, but coffee is probably one of the number one things for staining teeth. And that is more coffee than caffeine related. Dehydration. Now, there's some mixed schools of thought on this. There are some who say 1 to 3 cups of coffee a day have zero effect on the amount of water you need to intake. And there are others that say that you have to drink up to 5 glasses of water to offset the effects of 1 cup of coffee, because coffee does act as a diuretic, which is why we have to pee more often when we drink it, besides just the liquid thing. So there's a lot of different schools of thought on that in terms of dehydration. But the bottom line is if you were, what you don't want to do is you don't want to be drinking so many caffeine related substances that you're not actually taking in any water or clear liquids. That's really the bottom line there. And I was guilty of that once in my life. You wouldn't believe this, as much as I talk about health and water and diet and all that, that once upon a time when I was a teenager, my day started out with just about a pot of coffee between the time I got up in the morning and about noon, and then I would switch to Dr. Pepper all day. And I think it was rare, if ever, that I actually drank a glass of water. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. That leads to dehydration. If you're drinking 1 or 2 cups of coffee in the morning and then drinking light colored herbal teas, water the rest of the day, you're probably okay. Dehydration is not necessarily going to be an issue for you. But if all you're drinking all day is coffee and soda, that's going to be a bit of a problem. Increased blood pressure. Coffee is very much associated, especially in more excessive forms. It's more the caffeine, again, than it is the coffee, associated with increased blood pressure. Higher heart rate and palpitations in sensitive people, and I've experienced that. I'll tell that story in just a minute. Coffee jitters and muscle tremors. So if you've ever had the coffee jitters, you know, your stomach's kind of a little bit upset and you're kind of shaky and you're talking real fast, which I do anyway. I don't really need coffee to help with that. You know, you might even just feel a little bit wonky, or what I call a coffee buzz, where you start feeling a little bit loopy. Coffee can also lead to digestive issues such as acid reflux, heartburn, and gastrointestinal discomfort. And I believe that to have, as out of personal experience, to have as much to do with the coffee itself as the caffeine. That's going to be one that's going to lean towards both, or maybe more the coffee. And it's also, and again, different schools of thought here. There's some research that shows that coffee has a negative association with the risk of development for Alzheimer's. And some research shows that it has a positive association. In other words, that it can help reduce the risk of Alzheimer's development. So I think, just like anything else, there's a lot of research still to be done on that. And just like eggs back in the 80s and 90s, it could go all over the place. 1 minute it could be good, 1 minute it could be bad. We've seen this before, so just keep that in mind. Take everything with a grain of salt, unless you've researched it for yourself. Now the ugly. So research suggests, now a couple of these things, these articles that I read suggested that 1 to 4 cups of coffee a day is safe and recommended for the maximum benefits that I just listed off. However, there's another study that suggests that 28 cups a week, so that's 4 cups of coffee 7 days a week, raises the risk of premature death, especially if you're under 55. And now I wasn't clear from that study. I'm guessing that's more related to the caffeine than it is the coffee itself. Because remember, there's kind of 2 different things going on there. The ugly is it can increase anxiety, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. Some sources say excessive use can even result in paranoia and hallucinations, but I've not experienced that myself. But here's what I will tell you. So my story with coffee is this. It's kind of a love-hate relationship. As I just said, as a teenager, I started drinking coffee, and I drank it black, with nothing in it, anything in it. And I would drink about a pot a day in the morning, and then I would switch to Dr. Pepper in the afternoon. But I was, a teenager, so I thought I was 10 feet tall and bulletproof. And I didn't necessarily feel the effects of what I was doing at the time until I got older. As I got older, I started laying off the soda, but I continued to do the morning coffee. And I started having stomach issues. So this is where we touch on the gastrointestinal distress acid reflux. Now, I believe that to be the coffee because I experienced it even with decaf coffee. And I don't think it was caffeine related as much as I tend to produce a lot more stomach acid than the average person. I have a more acidic stomach. So the acid content in the coffee, and I've always been a dark roast drinker. The acid, and I'm trying to remember what I saw. I think it was dark roast that tends to have, I think because it's roasted longer. I can't remember if it was the dark roast that had a higher acid content or a lower acid content. But coffee can be kind of acidic. So if you have a naturally extra acidic stomach, coffee can cause a problem. And so what started happening was that I was struggling. I couldn't drink coffee on an empty stomach anymore. I still shouldn't. Let me just put it that way. I still shouldn't. I can get away with maybe 1 cup on an empty stomach, and then I need to put something in my stomach. So I'd gotten to the point where I was still drinking almost a pot of coffee a day, but I had to wait till after breakfast. And then I started noticing that things like I had to switch myself to low acid orange juice because that was causing problems, and I was having more and more stomach issues. And then I got a nasty case many, many years ago. My daughter was still in high school. I got a nasty case of food poisoning. We had been out shopping for a homecoming dress, and where we ate, we got home, she went out the door to go out with friends, and I went to the couch with the garbage can, and she was out the door about 30 seconds before it started. So what happened during that time is for the next probably 2 weeks after that case of food poisoning, I just couldn't bring myself to do the coffee. It didn't smell good. It didn't taste good. The food poisoning had nothing to do with coffee. As far as I know, we had Starbucks that day. So maybe there was something with the milk in my mocha. But I truly believe it was the food we had that day. But I couldn't bring myself to drink the coffee. So I just kept drinking tea and kept drinking tea. Well, one of the things I forgot to mention in the good section is that a lot of people claim that coffee has a laxative effect. So what was happening was I had always had, we'll just say troubles. I won't go into too much information, but I'd always had some troubles, and that during this 2 weeks that I couldn't bring myself to drink any coffee, a lot of those troubles went away. And I initially attributed it to just kind of cleaning myself out with the food poisoning, but that wasn't the case. It continued. And of course I wasn't drinking coffee, so I wasn't having the stomach problems. And I wasn't having any caffeine withdrawals really to speak of. Because I was drinking green tea and I was drinking black tea, so those have some caffeine in them, but everything was just functioning better. Everything was functioning better. So I finally figured out, I said to myself one day when I was like, I still don't like the idea of coffee. It's still just, I'm just not interested. And then I said to myself, Donna, why are you doing this to yourself? You know you've been having trouble with coffee for months, for years. The upset stomach, the coffee jitters, the bloated stomach when you drink too much of it. Why, if you've been off of it for 2 weeks, why go back to it now? So because of that, I went years without drinking coffee. There's a point to this, I promise. Because a lot of times we don't know how things affect us until not just that we go off of them, but that we go off of them and then go back on them. So a lot of times you would have no idea that whatever you're drinking, eating, whatever is affecting how you feel until you've given it up for a little bit and then gone back to it. Sometimes giving it up isn't enough because it's when you go back to it that you have that comparison and you go, oh, that's when the light bulb goes on. And that's when the light bulb went on for me. So let's talk about that light bulb. So I went off coffee for years, didn't drink it for years. And then I got introduced to coffee with Irish cream in it. And I really, really liked the flavor. And I had it for just a weekend, a little weekend vacation that we did. And I really liked the taste of it. And it didn't seem to bother my stomach. I also went to Michigan a few years ago and I had a cup of coffee almost every day while I was gone and didn't seem to have any effects from that. But that was when I was still drinking the coffee black. So I didn't seem to have any effects from it. So as you can see, if I'm not having any effects, naturally, I'm going to think, oh, well, it doesn't bother me anymore. So for a long time, I was just drinking the coffee on the weekends with a little Irish cream. And then when I retired and I was home all the time, and retired is a loose term because I'm in grad school and I work part-time for NAMI Citrus, and I also have an online activewear business. So retired is definitely a relative term. But the point is I was home more often. So I was like, oh, it's Tuesday. I can have a cup of coffee with Irish cream. I'm not going anywhere. No big deal. Nobody's going to know the difference, blah, blah, blah. So what happened was, because I like the flavor, I like the taste of it, not necessarily the caffeine, because I can go days without caffeine and it doesn't even faze me. I started gradually drinking more and more coffee. Well, lo and behold, it suddenly hits me but now I'm drinking it not black, but with Irish cream in it. So now here I am, not quite a year later. I'm 11 pounds heavier, y'all, and my stomach is bloated and distended all the time. And all of a sudden the light bulb goes on and I'm like, you dummy, you know what you're not supposed to be doing and you're doing it anyway. So what happens when I drink coffee? Well, for me, a cup here and there is not a big deal, but when I'm drinking it all the time, there's kind of a buildup effect, and I start having those gastrointestinal issues. And adding to it is not helping at all. I'm just saying, because I'm not a big drinker, and the liqueur that the Irish cream that I add is minimal. It's a negligible amount. But it's got fat in it, sugar, whatever. So I'm not doing myself any favors there. I'm adding calories, right? I'm now drinking calories that I wasn't drinking when I was drinking my coffee black. So on top of if I'm having it too many days in a row, the gastrointestinal stuff that starts up, and the anxiety jitters and all of that, it becomes a thing. So what I've noticed is if I have more than one cup of coffee, especially if my anxiety is already acting up a little bit, it ramps it up into high gear. There's no question about it. We're not just talking jitters. We're talking, I can feel and see my thought processes start to change, and that negative loop starts. So I know that caffeine, not the coffee per se, but caffeine is directly related to the amount of caffeine I'm taking in is directly related to my anxiety level. There's definitely a connection there, just like the research says. Additionally, I have kind of a buildup effect. So it's almost like if you have a mild allergy to, say, nuts, you might be okay if you eat nuts once in a while. But if you start eating nuts every day, you might find that you have this buildup effect where the next thing you know, you're having sinus issues, your throat feels like it's closing up, and your stomach is starting to fight back with you. You're starting to have stomach upset, gas, whatever, whenever you eat them. So for me, the coffee is more of a buildup effect, and this is why I'm telling you this story. If I have a cup here or a cup there, not a big deal. If I have it on the weekend, not a big deal. When I hit day 3 in a row, then day 4, it gets hard to walk away from the coffee, and then I'm like, oh, I really want some. I want to taste it. So it's kind of like bad food. I can have it one day. I can even have it 2 days. If I hit it day 3, now I'm craving the bad food, and it's harder to walk away from it. And it's the same thing with the coffee. So if I have it once in a while, not a big deal. But if I'm drinking it every day, I experience a buildup effect where I'm starting to have trouble with my stomach. And I start looking like the Michelin Man because it's distended and it's blown up. So this is the ugly side of coffee. Besides the fact that, like I said, some sources say excessive use can result in paranoia and even hallucinations. I've never experienced that personally for myself, but I have personally experienced what it can do to my stomach. That for me, although a lot of people claim it, once I have that buildup effect going, there's nothing laxative about it. I think it's causing me inflammation. I think it's causing me all kinds of problems. And that tells me that this is not something I need to be doing every day, whether it's black coffee or whether it's got Irish cream in it. So that's what some of the ugly can look like. And now, of course, this is basic information and I don't want to take too long. So I'm not trying to tell you have to stop drinking your coffee. I think really the message here for anyone else and for me is that moderation is what's key. And that's just with almost anything we do, good or bad, y'all, is just moderation is key. When I realized what was going on with my stomach and I started to back off the coffee, it was amazing the difference. I literally lost inches from my waistline within a few days. And that's not because I was losing weight, but because I was losing that bloating and that stomach distension and that gastrointestinal issue. So that's something I have to be very careful with. And I have to, as much as I like the flavor of my cup of coffee with the Irish cream in the morning, the Irish cream is not going to help me lose any weight. That's for sure. And the coffee is not something I should be having every day. My body tells me no. So if you're worried about things like anemia, stomach ulcers, adrenal fatigue, and some of these you may know, and some of these you may be surprised that can have negative associations with coffee. Anemia, adrenal fatigue, autoimmune, candida, gut health, GERD, IBS, or sleep issues, because caffeine can definitely disrupt your sleep, then you may need to reassess your relationship with coffee and or caffeine, depending on what you're doing. Because if you quit the coffee and you're like, I quit coffee, but you're hitting a Red Bull 3 times a day, you can have the same set of issues plus some with that. Those very, very high caffeine drinks can cause a lot of problems. And like I said, when I started, it has a lot more to do with the caffeine content and a lot less to do with the coffee, although I have demonstrated how I have problems that are very specific to the coffee itself. And I'm not the only one. I thought, I'll be like, am I the only one that doesn't get these benefits from the coffee? Like the laxative effect and all that. I'm not the only one. It's just that most people that have figured that out just don't bother with it. And that's, we will reach a point always where even if it's something we really like, if we know it's not good for us, we'll start to be turned off by it. And that's kind of what's happening for me again. Although I am drinking a little bit of coffee today. Because I've been thinking about coffee ever since I put this episode together, right? So, all right. So again, if you're worried about some of those particular, illnesses, chronic diseases, then you might want to reassess your relationship with caffeine in general. The best way to find out if it's something that's bothering you is go a few days without it. I went back on my morning hot lemon water, for 3 days, and, just my herbal tea and my green tea the rest of the day for 3 days. Cause I told myself, okay, no more coffee during the week. So 3 days, I noticed a very noticeable difference in how my clothes fit. And again, that was not weight. That wasn't bona fide weight. That was actual stomach bloating and distension that was coming down because I wasn't feeding my gut the coffee, every single day. So, all right. So some things to remember. 1 to 3 cups a day is fine for most people to get the benefits as part of a healthy lifestyle, or 400 milligrams of caffeine. Drip brewed coffee can range from 80 to 200 milligrams per cup, but the average 8-ounce cup, this is not 8 ounces, y'all. The average 8-ounce cup is 95 milligrams, and that might be where some of us are starting to get in trouble, including me, is an 8-ounce cup is not what we're drinking out of anymore. We are drinking out of giant cups that if you measure, I have some that are bigger than this, that if you measure are 12 to 16 ounces per cup, or we're hitting Dunkin' and we're getting like 20-ounce coffees. That's a lot. If you figure up to 200 milligrams of coffee per 8-ounce cup, the bigger our coffees get, the more caffeine we're taking in. Just keep that in mind. Coffee by itself is calorie-free for the most part, or negligible calories. It's what we start adding to it that can add additional problems like weight gain and additional calories, like creamers, milk, Irish cream, liqueurs, things like that. Those are the things that can add additional problems. I'm quite sure that the added Irish cream to my coffee over the last year is responsible for some of the additional weight gain I've experienced, because otherwise I still eat pretty well and sometimes don't eat enough. So that probably contributes too, but I'm sure the Irish cream has something to do with it. And then just remember that the numbers are all over the place, and so is the research, and it's going to change just like it did with eggs years ago, carbs, protein, all of those things. That information changes on the daily. I just saw someone post the other day that the doctors have finally announced that the recommended daily diet should include 9 servings of vegetables and fruit. I'm glad they finally caught up. Some of us knew that for years already. So hopefully that means there's going to be more of a push towards healthier foods and more vegetables and fruit. But the point is, again, is that this stuff is all over the place. The research is all over the place. And as fast as research comes out that says it's good, research will come out that say it's bad, and vice versa, or put limitations on it. So remember, the most important thing is go by how you feel. And if you're like, some of the stuff she described, I've experienced too, take a few days off. Take a few days off the coffee. Green tea is great. It's also got antioxidants, and it's got less caffeine than coffee, as black tea for the most part does. Try some tea for a couple of days. And that way you can kind of discern if it's a caffeine problem or if it's a coffee problem. And that's kind of what happened to me, is I determined that it's more of a coffee problem than a caffeine problem. Because if I'm doing the right things, I can go days without caffeine. I don't need caffeine. But for me, it's definitely coffee that causes the issue. And it's definitely the taste of the coffee with the Irish cream that I crave, not the caffeine. So keep that in mind. Those are just some things to remember. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you learned something here that you didn't know. And like I said, the best way to find out if it's having a negative effect on you is to take a break from it for a couple days, just a couple of days. And if it's a caffeine problem and you start experiencing headaches, then you can replace that caffeine in small amounts with things like black tea or green tea. I would stay away from the energy drinks. Those are a whole nother conversation. And remember that naturally occurring caffeine, I'm trying to think of the name. It starts with a G. Guarana seed is not necessarily better. Just because it's natural doesn't mean that you can take more of it or that it's safe in bigger doses. It's still caffeine. So again, everything in moderation is the real moral of the story here, and to listen to your body. And if you take a little break from something and you go back on it and you find a problem went away and then came back, then you definitely need to reassess your relationship with that thing, like the coffee or the caffeine or whatever the case may be. But I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please share. Again, Facebook's not showing me a whole lot today. So hopefully there's comments and questions when I get done that I can respond to. But if you see this after the fact, please hit #replay or ask a question, drop a comment. I'll be happy to respond. And in the meantime, have a fabulous Wednesday and be well. Bye.